Mini episode 1270 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the FDH Lounge. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris here, and I have fellow FDH Lounge original dignitary Chris Galloway. We're doing our 2020 NFL divisional previews. This is part 4 of the 2020 AFC West as we are going through this. And again, as we've been saying at the start of every segment here, the first 10 minutes or so of part 1, talking about the overall COVID situation this year in the NFL, how it's likely to affect the overall state of things here. From that point on, we're only talking about it as it affects certain teams as we're going along here, rather than redundantly talk about the same stuff at the start of every segment. So, beginning of part 1, if you want to hear our overall thoughts on that. And again, going into the division here, the 2020 AFC West, I would not be, I suppose, going out on this big of a limb by saying that I regard, of all teams, the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm prepared to push my chips to the middle of the table and say that I think they're not only the favorite in this division, Chris, but I will say kind of a strong favorite in this division. There, I said it.
Well, that's just so bold of you, Rick. I can't believe it. I mean, this is coming out with a hot take just like that. The Chiefs are going to be good, and the prohibitive favorites to win the division.
Just call me Skip
Amazing.
Bayless. Yeah.
How you could go there? I mean, I'm shocked. I really am shocked.
Yes.
Just discounting the Raiders. Just yes. What can be said? It's a quarterback-driven league, and they have the best quarterback in the league, beginning and end. Period. That's it.
True.
They have an inventive coach in Andy Reid. He knows how to craft an offense. They have talented positions, and they have the best quarterback in the league. I think you're going to see barring an injury, you're going to see a similar outcome to last year. This is a team that's going to, despite the fact that you could say, hey, take a step back. Again, it's hard to repeat, so I don't know that I would pick them to win the Super Bowl, and I know we're not doing that today. But I do think they're clearly the best team in the division. They're going to win the division. They're going to go deep into the playoffs. That's just the reality of the AFC West in 2020.
I would agree with that, and again, they're at a point where, again, with having the Honey Badger defensively, Chris Jones, Frank Clark, they're a little bit top-heavy defensively, but this is a deal where, really, they remind me of the Saints when they won the Super Bowl, that, the defense just has to be good enough. And that's where they were last year. Nobody would mistake this with being a dominant defense. But with the offense being where it is, you just got to be middle of the pack defensively here. And the Chiefs, I think, are, even with, again, an off-season where, again, they've started to run up against cap issues already, and everything like that. So this is a team that, again, one of the challenges that they may run into is not having a roster that's as deep as it was a year ago. But notwithstanding that, can they pull off a middle-of-the-pack defense again that is all to support the offense needs? I certainly think so.
Yeah, to your point, all they've got to try to be is the 16th best defense in the NFL, and they're going to go deep into the playoffs. And they have the personnel to be good enough. When you have Patrick Mahomes, you are never out of a game. Look at the Super Bowl last year.
Right.
I mean, the 49ers, for 3 quarters, had that game in hand for 3 quarters. They had him contained. The 49ers were, we went to the 4th quarter going, wow, they're going to do it. I mean, Shanahan is going to do it. And then I guess the 28-3 Atlanta Falcons Shanahan came out. we don't blame Shanahan. Maybe we just say Patrick Mahomes finally got to go in the fourth quarter, and they roared back and beat them. But when you have Mahomes, to your point, all you have to do is still just be kind of in a game, and that guy can find a way to put 3 quick touchdowns on the board in minutes, and next thing you know, boop, you go from certain loss to easy win.
Well, see, I see it a little bit differently, and I'll tell you why. Because Andy Reid is a guy where, again, for a long time, I thought that there were deficiencies that he had that were holding him back for being as good as everybody said. And I don't think it's necessarily just a matter of, he won a Super Bowl, he's a genius now. I think he proved he's a genius because of the way that he did it. Because I said prior to the Super Bowl, I was having bad flashbacks to my Dolphins losing to the 49ers in Super Bowl 19. A finesse team versus a more complete team, right? The Dan Marino Dolphins reminded me a lot of this Chiefs team here and being a finesse team. And I said in my Super Bowl preview, I said, here's how the Chiefs can do it, but I don't think Andy Reid will. And that is, you have to commit, because the 49ers were a much better team in terms of controlling the clock. You have to commit in the first half especially to chewing up the clock. And man, they just kept giving it to Damian Williams. They were pounding the ball. In the fourth quarter, dude, I look at it, I think the 49ers were winded. I think they took the wraps off in the fourth quarter, unleashed Mahomes, unleashed the Kraken here, so to speak. I think that's what happened. I think Andy Reid worked the perfect game plan because he refused to let the 49ers push them around physically. They ran a game plan that was a lot more conservative in the first half. It had a lot of people scratching their heads, but I was sitting there at the Super Bowl party I was at like, I'll be damned. Andy Reid's doing what I thought he should do. And in the second half, it paid off.
Well, I think you're 100% right. It was a great game plan in retrospect of what he did, but I think that's the same Andy Reid we've always had. The difference is that he didn't have Patrick Mahomes. He didn't have, in the fourth quarter he could run that type of game plan, knowing that, hey, I can pick up for even if I'm down 2 touchdowns in the end of the game because I have the human joystick. As a quarterback, right? He never had that. Even as good as McNabb was, he wasn't Mahomes. And so, to your point, it's a great game plan that you can only really do with a couple of quarterbacks in this league. Maybe Mahomes and Russell Wilson. Otherwise, I don't think there's any other quarterback in the league you would gamble that game plan on by basically taking it out of their hands for 3 quarters. And then wearing down the other team, and then finally going, okay, it's like rope-a-dope, right? Like, okay, right. We wore them out, now go get them. You're right, it worked, but it only works because you have Patrick Mahomes.
Well, but I guess my point on Andy Reid...
the legend of Andy Reid, he's always been a good coach. But when you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes, it gives you the ability to do things that clearly Shanahan couldn't do in the Super Bowl because he was doing the opposite. He didn't trust Garoppolo. He was taking the ball out of his hand till the end. Right. So, and he did throughout the whole playoffs. He basically just said, I don't trust you, and I'm not going to put the game on your shoulders, where Reid said, yeah, I trust you so much, I'm going to take the ball out of your hands for 3 quarters, and then I'm going to put it all on your shoulders.
Well, here's the thing, though, and you're right, he never had him before, but I just don't see Philly Andy Reid as a guy that made that many genius adjustments. I look at, again, the way that the Super Bowl ended against the Patriots there with that interminable, 56-minute drive down the field at the end there when they were down 2 scores. I mean, that Andy Reid, I don't think, had that kind of moxie in him. I think he's really grown since then.
I don't know. I don't really see any real changes in Andy Reid. Again, I think good coaches try to adapt to what they have, and they try to game plan based on what they have. And I think Andy Reid is not the best, one of the best at doing that. And sometimes it doesn't always work out. But when you have a guy like Mahomes, it certainly does help to then add to the, boy, he really is a smart coach. Well, he always was.
He was always
sometimes it just doesn't.
Very good. Sure.
Back to our old Tom Brady, Bill Belichick argument, right?
Well, that's true. That's true. And that,
is Bill Belichick a good coach? Yes, he is. But, it certainly helps to have tools that really make you look smarter. And Mahomes makes Andy Reid look smarter, even though Andy Reid's not a smart guy. All that being said, Chiefs win the division. Barring an injury to Patrick Mahomes, there's no doubt about it.
I think so as well, and I will say too. Last note on this, that the upgrade at running back this year, getting Clyde Edwards-Helaire in there, I think he is the perfect fit for this offense, and I think it becomes now a little bit closer. No offense to Williams, but it's a little closer to what it was when you had Kareem Hunt in there and a running back that is really geared for this system, as opposed to what Williams was last year, which was, and Shady McCoy also, guys who could be serviceable in the system. Now you have a guy who's built for it.
Right. I totally agree. He fits their system perfectly, which will just make them more dangerous because now you have a capable running back that's what they want to do, behind Mahomes.
Yep. And looking at this here, moving to what I see as being the second best team in the division and a wild card team, a team that I seemingly every year am picking to make the playoffs, but never seemingly do that much. That would be the LA Chargers, their first year in, SoFi Stadium, but before probably nobody, so not much of a new home field advantage. But again, they were playing in the junior college soccer stadium the last couple of years, so this is actually a step up, having no fans as opposed to all the fans cheering against them for their hometown teams, all those LA transplants. So, empty stadium, upgrade! But, this is a thing where, again, Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, I mean, the epitome of the guy of like, well, maybe he won't lose games for us. And, I suppose he can pretty much fill that role there. Austin Eckler, first year as the lead running back, at least from day one. I mean, he had to become that sort of on the fly last year, and it worked out well. A receiving core that is always better on paper than it is in reality. A defense that gets Derwin James back. You've got Joey Bosa in there. It definitely got star power in a lot of different places here. And a team that can be among the more exciting ones in the league. We'll see how long Taylor's got the starting job. He's been here before, i.e. 2 years ago. So we'll see. I think he's going to have a longer leash from Anthony Lynn because I think Lynn sees him as the better chance for, again, managing the games sufficiently to be able to get in there. And I agree with what you said about Phillip Rivers in a previous segment, that he didn't do a good job of keeping them in games last year. Taylor will at least do that. So, I mean, that seems to be the theme here, doesn't it? Going from, turnover-prone Phillip Rivers to a game manager, going from a stadium where fans root against you to one where it's empty. It's all about reasonable expectations moving forward for the Chargers this year.
Yeah, I have historically the last few years loved this Chargers roster in terms of where it's been going, and there's a lot of things I like about it. More so now than I ever have. To your point, the defensive side of the ball is looking so good. It's so stacked. And then they go and they add great rookies like Kenneth Murray out of Oklahoma to their linebacking core. I mean, this guy is a leader. He is smart. This is the kind of guy that's going to start day one. I think he's going to. He'd be better. I think that what we've seen so far out of camp with him is that's proving to have been a great pick. This defense is going to keep them in games. Bringing over a defensive tackle and Linval Joseph from the Vikings to beef up their line. I love their defense. I just love their defense. And I think that's going to make them competitive in this division to the end. Now, the problem becomes you have to score points in the NFL in order to win. And, again, the common theme that I just keep hammering on is this is a quarterback league. And, yes, Tyrod Taylor took the Bills to the playoffs where they were winning every week 13-7. I don't believe in Tyrod Taylor as a guy who's going to light it up. To your point, the underage wide receivers are not going to be helped by Tyrod Taylor. You saw it with Cleveland briefly for a few weeks when he was in Cleveland, where he just didn't. He had his opportunities, and other than that Saints game, he just never looked great. it was like, okay, game manager.
Right.
To your point, Austin Eckler, a revamped offensive line, underachieving wide receivers. They've got a great tight end, but then you've got Tyrod Taylor, who's just sort of a game manager. I don't see the Chargers scoring a lot of points this year. And in a division where you're going to have teams that can score points, i.e. the Chiefs, I think the Chargers are going to struggle. And, everything aside, besides what a travesty that them being in Los Angeles and playing second fiddle in that stadium. I mean, they are the fourth most favorite team in Los Angeles.
Right.
I mean, it's an absolute joke that they're there. And the fact that the NFL allowed this travesty to occur, I just, shame on them. And I've predicted as soon as their window finally ends in Los Angeles, they will leave. When they get their first out of that contract on that stadium, it's inevitable. They are not going to be long-term in Los Angeles. They don't have a fan base there. My God, that is first and foremost a Raiders town. Then it's the Rams town. Then it's a Cowboys town. And then it's the Chargers. It's a joke. And they shouldn't be there. And, there's no home field advantage for them, even more so than, as we outlined, playing in the soccer stadium that held 25,000 people, of which 21,000 were the opposing team's fans that live in L.A. now. I just see the Chargers as my third-placed team in that division because I don't think they're going to score enough points, and I think that they're correctly going to not force Justin Herbert out on the field. Is he the future? I don't know, but with no off season, there's no way you can run that kid out there. So Tyrod Taylor is going to be the guy this year, barring injury, and he's just underwhelming. He's underwhelming. He's a game manager. You're not going to score enough points to compete in that division, despite how good that defense is going to be.
Right.
They're my third place team.
Well, and I suppose the Raiders are the next team we should probably talk about. I have a point of segue here. I'm going to ask you what you think the effect of this is going to be. Without we don't tend to break a lot of kayfabe about each other's some of our other professional work or whatever. I will just say some of mine stems around things that may involve infrastructure issues in the West. So this is something that's come across my desk. By 2023, there will be a completed high-speed rail between Vegas and L.A. Chris, I'm going to ask you what you think, what kind of effect that might have on football fans in Southern California and what their viewing options will be for football on NFL Sundays.
Well, first of all, there will not be a completed rail by 2023 because they haven't even started laying tracks yet. And it'll be grossly over budget.
Okay.
So
that said,
I agree with the premise. I do think one is coming. I do think there is going to be an LA to Vegas, line at some point. But it's not going to happen that fast. That being said, look, I was a fan of the Raiders going to Vegas.
Right.
I thought it was the obvious move, despite their goofy efforts to look at LA and San Antonio and all this other. The Vegas move was the one that made the most sense for the Raiders because they have a national fan base. And Vegas is a national city now. People flying in from all over the country to Vegas every day of the week. And it's that kind of town. And it's a growing town on its own. There's a population there that can support an NFL team, obviously. And when you have a national following like the Raiders, when you say Raiders Nation, man, they're not kidding. Whether it's Los Angeles, Oakland, the Raiders are everywhere. And so they're the one team in the NFL that I was like, yeah, it doesn't really matter where the hell they go. There's suddenly the Topeka Raiders. It's going to be like, wow, look at the Topeka Raiders. I mean, it was a great move, business decision by the Raiders to move there. They get a world-class, state-of-the-art stadium where they're making real revenue where they weren't before in Oakland. They were really hampered. We've talked about this in the past on this show. the reason that they traded off was the linebacker they traded off to the Bears. I think
yeah.
The reason they traded Mack to the Bears is it's very simple, and that was that they didn't have the cash to sign him.
Right.
Think about that.
Yep.
The owner of the Raiders, his only money that he makes as the owner of the Raiders, he has no other business. He doesn't have billions of dollars of truck stop wealth or other things. It's purely what he's pulling with the Raiders. And because of the way NFL contracts are, to do a $50 million signing bonus, that had to go to escrow. He had to write a check that day. Max signs the deal, and he's going to take $50 million out of his pocket and put it in a bank account.
Right.
And he didn't have the cash. That was why they got rid of Mack. They all talk about, we're going in a different direction with this. It's all about that. They're cash poor. And he needed to fix that. And so going to Las Vegas infused a ton of cash into that franchise. And they get probably now the nicest, most beautiful facility in the league. Vegas is going to be a destination for free agents because of the tax advantages of Nevada. And plus let's be honest, it's certainly sexy to play for the Raiders.
Right.
And so now the Raiders have taken themselves from a shitty position to now a tremendous position. Now he has the cash to sign a guy like Mack. Where before he literally had to get rid of his best player because he couldn't afford him. He couldn't write the check. So I love the move the Raiders to Vegas. It made sense for them. It's good for the league, in my opinion. And the rail line, to your point, in the future will just add to that. It will help to further doom the Chargers in Los Angeles because nobody there is a Chargers fan, and the Raiders fans in Los Angeles can be in Las Vegas in 2 hours on a train.
Yep.
And then after the game, they can literally get on trains and head right back. I mean, people do it now after the Super Bowl. I go out to Vegas every year for the Super Bowl, and as soon as the Super Bowl's over on West Coast time, people they make their next year wages in the casinos and stuff.
Right.
And they live in LA. They're 3.5 hours away. They just get on the highway and they drive. They leave, and they're back home by midnight and it works the next day.
Oh yeah.
A train is only going to just accelerate that. The Raiders are going to be in a great position long term. Facilities are amazing. Growth in that market. I mean, they are now really well positioned as a franchise.
Yep.
And I got to say, and I told you this off the air, I got to eat crow, man. I mean, I've trashed Chucky like crazy.
Right.
But the reality is they've done a nice job in terms of talent acquisition on that team. Not every move has worked, but they certainly have. They've got a great running game. Derek Carr, I still think, is a good quarterback, despite the fact that his head coach clearly doesn't believe in him.
Right.
And I think they're going to use him, and I expect them to trade him away this year. And they'll get some more assets out of somebody. Again, a guy like Derek Carr, I kept thinking, was always a guy that you could end up seeing in a place like, the New York, the Giants or something like that. Now they've got Jones. So I think there are still some teams out there that Derek Carr would be a real upgrade for them. Who knows? Maybe a team like the Patriots. So I think that you're going to see the Raiders shop him at the end of this year, if not even maybe during the season. And they're going to go in a different direction. I don't think they're mistaken if they think Mariota is the future. But the Raiders have real talent. I thought they had good drafts. They added speed to the outside. They have, they still need to work on that defense. But the Raiders are clearly a team when you look at this roster, and Chucky does a good job of coaching. I mean, I got to tip the cap to him. They're in every game. They're competitive. And they just keep each year since he's been there, they upgraded the roster slightly, like a little step every year. It's gotten a little better. And I think the Raiders are going to be in it competing for a playoff, opportunity right to the end. They don't have the offensive ability, I think, to overtake the
Chiefs.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't see that. And actually, I think got them as sort of that third place team, kind of tied with the Chargers. I see them both as like 3-4, right? Like they're my 3-4 interchangeable. Very, I think I actually misspoke. I had the Chargers because of Tyrod, one game below the Raiders. So I actually have the Chargers in last place. You're going to be like, what? I misspoke when I said third. I have the Raiders in third place, one game ahead of the Chargers.
Well, I got the Raiders.
Which teases into who I have as the surprise second place.
Okay, well, let me get a couple things here on the Raiders. I got them at 8-8. The Chargers at 9-7. So I got them a game back. I got the Raiders a game out of the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'm flipped. I have the Raiders at 8-8 and the Chargers at 7-9.
Okay, so we agree on the record anyway. So it's a thing where you mentioned it in passing, the running game. Josh Jacobs was a very, very nice draft pick here. They've done well in drafting the last couple of years here. After a kind of fitful start, I still think Reggie McKenzie was kind of made the scapegoat for their drafting, but they've done a nice job over the course of time. The Raekwon McMillan thing here this summer, that's kind of interesting as well, as far as pieces to the defensively.
Adding depth, right?
Adding depth.
They're adding depth, and I don't hate that move. But it's not going to move the needle in terms of wins and losses.
No, but it helps, and it was. I did wonder a little bit why the Dolphins thought it was as good of a move, but no, that it definitely helps a little bit. And I will say, to answer my own question that I posed to you, my prediction is once high-speed rail is in, however many years it takes, and however far over budget it may be, and for whatever provisos we want to put on this, I think you will have more Raiders season tickets and the ticket holders in the LA area than Chargers ones. There, I said it. And by the way, those trips back and forth on the train on Sundays, you got to presume it's going to be predominated by Raider fans. That is going to take the concept of hotboxing to a new level. If we go back to make another Ohio reference, a lot of Meigs County gold will be wafting in the air, Chris Galloway, on those planes, or on those trains back and forth.
And again, to your point, look, that's just like being a Brown fan in Columbus, right?
Sure,
it's not a big jump.
Right.
To go from one spot to the other.
Right.
And to your point, I think the only thing that holds back about more season ticket holders in Los Angeles for the Raiders than for the Chargers will be the fact that, local Nevadans have bought up Raiders tickets.
True.
So I don't know where these LA people are getting them from.
True.
Unless they've already invested in them, which I know already a lot of them have, but
could be
predominantly a Nevada team at this point.
Could be.
So I don't know that you're going to be totally correct on that.
Yeah.
But
if I'm wrong, that'll be why.
But, you might be since the Chargers are going to have like 4 season ticket holders. So
pretty much, yeah.
It may not be very difficult.
Yeah, it might be a low bar to climb. But I have the Raiders at 8-8, along with a team that you obviously are higher than I am. I have Denver at 8-8 as well. Drew Lock did show some nice things down the stretch last year. Again, they still they have many nice pieces defensively, of course, led by Von Miller. And offensively, nice now two-headed piece at running back here with Lindsey and Gordon. A receiving core that, again, you and I said it on draft night. I am speechless that Jerry Jeudy dropped as far as he did. To me, he's the guy that comes out once every couple of years at wide receiver, and Denver ends up snagging him. So that is the kind of thing that can help take a quarterback to the next level. And again, I'm not quite there yet on Drew Lock, but I don't rule out that he is that guy at that level, and Jerry Jeudy could certainly help him actualize that potential.
Well, I think what the Broncos have done is made that offense potentially as explosive as the Browns offense could be.
Mm-hmm.
The two-headed monster at running back. They've got I think the young tight end is going to emerge this year as a real weapon for them. The kid out of Iowa, what's his name? I'm trying to think of his name off the top of my head.
Which one do they have? It's Fant. They have Fant.
Fant. Sorry. I think Noah Fant is going to fit that offense beautifully. And then the outside, look, and they still have a very good, if not elite defense. Along with the advantages of playing in Denver, and their record this year, or their schedule, Broncos are that team, and there's a huge caveat, obviously, and he's so young, and we don't know, and it could all unravel because he could be proved to be fool's gold. But if Drew Lock plays this year like he did last year when he finally got cleared and got out there on the field, Denver, that's why they're my number 2 team. They've got the talent now across the board they're surrounding him with. I look at them a lot like Cleveland, but with a better defense.
Okay.
And if Drew Lock can can play as well as he did at the end of last year, make a little slight step forward, I see them. I've got them as 9-7, and the second place team in the division, and again competing for the playoffs. I think they're going to edge out the 8-8 and 7-9 Chargers, despite the fact that I love the Chargers defense. How many times can I say that?
Yeah.
But they're not going to score enough points with Tyrod Taylor to win enough games. And the Raiders, I just can't buy into them as being anything beyond 8-8 yet. They're going to be competitive. They're going to win games. They're going to lose games they shouldn't lose. They're going to be a lot like the Raiders last year. And so I just think the team that's going to jump is Denver. And I think that, I think they could very well split with the Chiefs. And I think that Drew Lock could finally be the answer after Elway and all his failures. And I will just say this, the caveat. Drew Lock could also prove to be an abject failure this year. He could melt down, be an immature brat, fail, and we'll be all talking about, boy, what a terrible job John Elway's done finding quarterbacks.
Right.
I guess I'm gonna hang my hat on what I saw at the end of last year with Lock and the weapons they added around him, and say, okay, I think they've got something here. I think 9-7. I think competing for the playoffs, and I like the trajectory because that defense is so good.
Well, I agree with a lot of what you're saying there as far as what there is to like about Denver. And like I said, you're a little bit ahead of me on that, but I got them at 8-8, and I have them being a team that could kind of make that jump there. I would be remiss before getting to the end of the division here if I didn't mention this. This is one of these, everybody out there, pound a shot whenever Rick Morris mentions this concept, but this is one that you and I both agree about, and that is the concept of players defensively. And this might be the second most important thing on a team to a quarterback. We could have that argument about the force multiplier player, the player who is not only great, but makes those around him better. In his young time in the NFL, Derwin James has been that for the Chargers, and they missed him terribly last year when he was out. It was part of a snowballing nightmare season. It's a season that I know, again, you and I both think is atypical of the trajectory of the Chargers, which has been to be pretty good to really good, but not great. And I don't know that either one of us sees them breaking that this year. But Derwin James, with what he's doing in there, I don't know how many examples there are in the NFL right now of being a force multiplier, but Derwin James is that guy.
No, he absolutely is. You know how much I loved him coming out of college.
Yep.
And I just thought he was one of those guys that, in every draft you circle, and he was that guy in that year that I was like, to go back to that Browns movie, but Derwin James at all costs, like this guy. Of course,
right.
They didn't, but I just loved him. I think he's, to your point, the force multiplier that you and I have talked about, the guy that makes everybody around him better. And when they're missing him, everybody takes a step back. He clearly is that player for them. And that's why I love that defense, because a full year of Derwin James, that defense, I think, is going to be the best in that division, if not, top 5 in the league. But again, they can't score enough points for it to matter in a league where you've got to score to win. And that's why I just believe in the Chargers this year. It's a quarterback league still. And if Derwin James could play quarterback as well, I might be more likely to pick them. I see them disappointing despite that defense at 7-9. And I have Denver at 9-7, flip it over, not as good a defense, still a great defense, but not as elite, but they're going to be able to score points in that offense. The Pats much better playmakers. And honestly, right now, I believe in Drew Lock more than I do Tyrod Taylor when it comes to scoring points.
Well, yeah, I can understand that part of it. And also, too, one of these things with Denver of where some of their players are a little bit older, obviously, some of the ones that were the key players on the run to the Super Bowl a couple of years back. But it's one of these things where Vic Fangio is the head coach. He is an example of a guy who can get more out of less. So if there's anybody that can sort of turn back the clock a little bit with that defense a little bit, it might be him. And I am a big fan of him as a coach as well. Last question I have for you is this: do you have Denver sneaking into the playoffs or just missing it?
Well, I mean, at 9-7, I guess I got them in, and especially with the extended, the expanded playoff with an extra spot. Mm-hmm. At 9-7, I've got them in.
Okay. All right, there's a real clip and save, much like some of mine in here. One of my early clip and saves would be in the previous segment here, the Colts to go 10-6 and win the AFC South. So a couple of times here, going on a little bit of a limb in the AFC. The NFC, of course, has a number of divisions that are sort of kind of topsy-turvy, and when we resume, it will be with the NFC East. But again, want to thank you again, Chris, for this. A great segment here, part 4 of our 2020 NFL divisional previews, this being the AFC West. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.